Hello everybody, welcome back. It's me, Mr. Brown here, with Chapter 3 of The Snail Patrol by Krista Lacey. Meanwhile, over in Pottledown Crescent, Darren was preparing for an evening's work. It began with a rather strange request. "Mum, can we have Brussels sprouts for tea?" Mrs. Winterburn was laying the kitchen table and nearly dropped a fork on the floor in shock. "What?" she murmured. "What did you say?" It was a well-known fact that Darren hated greens. Darren shrugged and looked out of the kitchen window. He drew a snail on the glass with his fingertips. "I just fancied some sprouts. That's all." There was a pause. Then Mrs. Winterton screeched, "Oh my goodness!" She slapped a hand to her forehead and a look of mock horror spread over her face. "Aliens have stolen my darling Darren and replaced him with an exact vegetable-eating replica. Whatever are we going to do?" Darren sighed. Sometimes his mother was just too daft for words. "Anyway," she said, becoming normal again, "whatever you're up to, the answer is no. We're not having Brussels sprouts for tea. We're having spinach instead." She prodded the tip of his nose with her finger and turned away with a satisfied smirk. Darren was unmoved. He pulled a pen and a piece of crumply paper from his pocket. "Is spinach green and leafy?" he asked. "Very," said his mother, taking plates from the cupboard. Darren nodded and made a tick on the paper. "Can I have a double helping, please?" Mrs. Winterburn made a sort of squeaking noise and had to steady herself against the back of a chair. "I think I might be going to faint," she said. What Mrs. Winterburn didn't know, of course, was that Darren had no intention of eating the spinach. He hated all veg except carrots, possibly. If you mixed carrots with custard, they were brilliant for making fake doggy sick. The spinach was just part of his master plan. During tea, while his mum was at the fridge and his dad was filling out his football coupon, Darren snatched a big pile of spinach off his plate and squidged it carefully into his pocket. And then after tea, he slipped unnoticed into the garden and lobbed the spinach over George Macduff's wall. Spinach was perfect snail bait. Darren knew because that afternoon he'd been to the school library and looked up some interesting facts about snails. He had written them down on a page of his workbook, along with some decent hunting tips. Interesting facts about snails. Snails hide under stones. Get torch and good proddy stick. 2. They come out at night in drizzly rain. Wear parka, wellies, and hat. 3. They like beer. Yuck! Raid Dad's secret supply in shed. 4. They eat green and leafy food. Ask Mum for double sprouts tonight. Darren rubbed his hands in glee. Everything was going perfectly to plan. It was even drizzling with rain outside, and the sky was overcast, charcoal grey. Now all he had to do was wait until his mum and dad sat down to watch TV, and he could whiz round the house and collect a few things. He started in the cupboard underneath the kitchen sink. That was where Mum kept the empty jam jars. Darren rooted out 9 in all. He carefully put the jars and their lids in a carrier bag and then opened the kitchen door and slipped silently out into the garage. Somewhere in the distance an owl hooted. Darren responded with a very gentle howl. To Darren's relief, his dad hadn't put the car away yet, and so there was plenty of room to move about in the garage. Leaving the bags of jars by the door, Darren hurried across to the shelf near the mower, opened the toolbox, and rummaged around. He found a reel of string and stuffed it into his pocket. Then he lifted his dad's torch off a hook on the workbench and flashed a big round moon on the garage wall. "This is the voice of the Mr. Ons," he chanted. "We have come to steal your beer, earthlings." He let the beam drop onto an old oak cabinet where Dad kept oil and pots of paint and a secret supply of lager. Lager was a kind of beer, Darren thought. It tasted just as useless anyway. He was wondering how much lager a snail could drink when suddenly the kitchen light went on. Darren panicked and pushed the torch up his jumper. If he was found in the shed with a can of lager and 9 jam jars, there might be some awkward explaining to do. He stood, stone still, and watched the house. He could see his mum at the kitchen window. She slid a few pots and pans into the bowl and tended the leaves of the spider plant. When she parted the slats of the kitchen blinds, Darren nearly shriveled in his socks. And then, thankfully, the light went out. Darren breathed a sigh of relief. It was time he got back, or he might be missed. He tiptoed towards the door of the shed, picked up the carrier bag, and clang, clang, clankle, clankle, stumbled over something lying on the floor. His dad's welding goggles. Darren bit his lip. He'd always wanted to go with them. They were a little bit big and they weren't really needed for snail patrolling, but he snatched them up anyway. If he had to dig around in splattery mud, he might be glad of some eye protection, even if he did look a total wally. Safe in his bedroom, with his items collected, Darren became a changed person. Once he had been an ordinary lad. Now he became Snail Boy. And that's the end of chapter 3, and we'll bring you chapter 4 very soon. Take care, everybody. See you soon. Bye-bye now.